I made 6 crazy slime farms using the new 1.21 potions, which is perfect for my Farm Everything series where I'm trying to design an automatic farm for every single item in the game of Minecraft. You guys can check out the progress here on the spreadsheet, which I'll put in the description. If you're ever bored and wondering what farm you should build in your world next, this will definitely help you out. Hello there, Ray here. Let's take a look at each of these and see which one is best for your Minecraft world. In my AFK cobweb farm, I sneak peek this machine here, which is my playerless slime farm. The way it works is that we have the new infested potions up here. We splash these on top of some zombies. Now, every time the zombies get hit, we'll have a 5% chance of producing some silverfish. And the way I'm able to continue to hit them without them actually dying is by using snow golems, which are already mad at hostile mobs. So they'll automatically shoot their snowballs at it. And I got a few in each of these pins around the outside. That way it doesn't matter which way the zombie gets pushed. A different golem from a different side can hit him again. Otherwise they'll get pushed into one corner and only one would get hit. The silverfish are spawning just inside of the zombies, and I have them standing on top of an iron bar so that the silverfish will get squished out and pushed to the edge and then fall down between the gap, and then they'll end up here in our collection bay. This is where we use the next potion, the potion of oozing. Any mobs that have this effect, when they die, will produce 2 medium slimes. So then I can automatically splash them and drop them, and as soon as they die, we get medium slimes, and then they die on the campfires and they produce tiny ones, and the tiny ones will break up and die and turn into tons and tons of slime balls. So just by using my simple farm here, you can actually make a playerless slime farm because we don't actually need the player to be here in order for the mobs to spawn in. The snow golems themselves will continue to hit zombies as long as they're in entity processing chunks. I covered how chunk loading works in the newer versions in this video here, so if you have any questions, that video will answer everything and I'll put it in the description for you. We also have hostile mobs, but I went ahead and name tagged them, giving them the dinner bone name tag so I can easily tell which ones are named and which ones aren't, and that way they can't despawn. So the only thing that could despawn is the silverfish. If there happens to be a player in the same dimension but greater than 128 blocks away, you see the silverfish actually despawn. And because of this, we can't have other players in the same dimension unless they're nearby so they can't despawn. So you could build this by your base, but luckily there's this end dimension here which hardly anyone ever goes inside of. So by building this farm near the obsidian platform, we can chunk load this area so that it can constantly run. As here in the end dimension, there is 9 chunks that can be loaded as entity processing without the player ever having to come over here. And I have a separate video all about chunk loading the end dimension. So the majority of the time, this farm can be running without any interruptions. If a player did come over to end dimension, it would just reduce its efficiency for a little bit until the player left. Now this is what it looks like with the redstone timers put in. As these are 3-minute potions, I got a hopper clock over here which is set to 3 minutes, so it drops 1 every 3 minutes for those zombies. And then we can let the silverfish pile up about twice as long. So I went ahead and just put a T flip-flop in here. They'll only drop these guys every other time it does to the zombies. You try to get as many entities as possible to be splashed with a single potion. That way you get the most efficiency out of each of them. You can also use witches, as witches will automatically re-heal themselves, but unlike other design, we don't need to have 2 different types of mobs. We can just have witches, and then we can damage them by a natural means. We can't use most damages like lava or water because they can drink fire resistance as well as water breathing. And if you damage a witch too fast, they can actually die because they can't drink their healing potions fast enough. And they have unlimited source of healing potions. So one of the few things that we can damage them with that they cannot avoid is the freezing effect from the powder snow. Now this only damages them 1 time every 2 seconds, which is slower than mobs getting hit because they only have a ½ second worth of cooldown before they can be hit again. And just like the other design, we can hit them with infested potion. Every time they take damage, there's a chance of summoning in some silverfish. And since these mobs are sitting inside of a ladder, they're not taking any entity cramming, so you can put a lot of them in there. This also means they can't push each other, meaning you could push them over into the side like I did here. That way, whenever the silverfish spawn, they immediately fall and don't even have to get pushed sideways. But because the silverfish fall as a single group, I do need to kind of space them out so they don't take entity cramming as fast down here. And that's why I have a minecart here that's kind of pushing them into 4 groups. Now having a climbing block like vines or ladders won't work here to stop entity cramming, as the silverfish will just climb to the top of it and then they'll no longer be inside of it, and then they start taking the cramming. And then you can use a second clock to drop in the oozing potions, or I'm just using the same clock, which they get hit with the potion and then they fall down and die, and then we get tons and tons of slime balls. Now another type of damage that witches can't avoid is poison damage. So I got some witches here, and I got a pufferfish over here in a minecart. And then about every 5 seconds, we're going to push the witches close enough so they can get re-poisoned by the pufferfish. Now we can't just get the witches poisoned without them also taking the damage that the pufferfish gives, which is quite a bit, so we can't leave the witches over there beside it, otherwise they will die. The nice thing about poison is it can damage the witches more often. Poison does damage to the mob every 1¼ seconds, and the more time they get damaged, it just means we're going to get more silverfish. And just like the other ones, we drop them with the potion and get tons of slime and their slime balls. We're halfway, so double check that you're still subscribed so you don't miss out on what I do next. Now there's another mob that has regen that we can get more easily than witches in large amounts, and that is the allay mob. We can breed up infinite amounts of these by using my allay breeder here, which is even AFK. Then we just let them fly upwards into this tube, and once they get into the water, they'll continue to try to fly upwards. And with the ladder, we don't have to worry about them taking entity cramming. As soon as we hit them with the potion of infestation, you can see they just start unloading silverfish. Now, unlike the other design where we have the silverfish falling down below, when it comes to allays, they do spawn in their silverfish up near their head. So then I just put in some water up above, which they get pulled into and they get separated from the allays. And then we move them over here. And once again, we're using the same type of hopper clock, but we're just pulling a signal from the side so that we're only dousing the allays with the infestation every 3 minutes. But we're hitting the silverfish with the oozing potions much more often, as this farm really produces. Every silverfish means 6 slime balls. This one's a fun one to watch work. By the way, if you're enjoying the video so far, leave a like on it. Now all these farms are kind of tileable, so you can make them as big as you want or as many entities, as long as entity cramming isn't occurring by having that ladder inside. So the rates of all these playerless ones really depends on how many mobs you put inside. So if you want to get 1,000,000 slime balls per hour, it's possible. Now this is all great if you want to go playerless, but there's a better way of getting tons of mobs in order to be killed in order to make slime balls. And that is by using my enderman farm here. Just like in my combo farm, it's a lot simpler to just have the player let mobs spawn in around them here in the end dimension. The enderman will spawn up here on this platform here, get attracted to the endermite, and then get aligned and drop down this kill chute here, where they'll get low health, and then they'll just be stored in here. Then we'll splash them with the new oozing potion, and then we'll finish them off by hitting them with some lava. Each enderman will produce 2 medium slimes, and then when they break up by these campfires here, each of those will produce between 2 to 4 tiny slimes. They'll all end up dying on these campfires here, and then they'll drop tons and tons of slime balls, and we have a bunch of hoppers underneath which are picking up all the slime, moving it over here, and pushing them into these crafters. I have a row of crafters on both sides, and then every time they're crafting something, they're trying to push it into these chests here. And as you can see, it's extremely efficient at producing slime balls. This way we can store more slime, as each stack of slime blocks is 9 stacks of slime balls. And you might be wondering what happens if ender pearls from the endermen that die fall over here and get picked up by these hoppers. Well, the way I designed this platform here is that the majority of the ender pearls will get caught on this platform here, and they can't fall far enough to end up getting picked up by the hoppers. And the side with this trap doors, when the enderman died, the medium slimes will be stuck inside of them, so they'll be able to clip through and come over here and fall down and die. Where none of the ender pearls will clip through and end up over here. This works really good for 2 sides, but on this side over here, because I have the enderman split into 4 different groups, minimize entity cramming, I couldn't just put in a simple wall and split the mediums away from the enderman. So I just have to rely on this platform to catch most of the pearls. There's also the challenge of making sure that the endermen, when they take damage by falling down here, don't try to teleport into the rest of this area here. Otherwise, if they teleport over here, which it can actually teleport directly onto campfires, they would just die and the pearls would get pulled into the system, and this would clog up our auto-crafter systems. But rather than coming in with some item sorters, I was able to keep this entire design simple just by preventing the majority of the pearls from falling off the platform or the enderman from teleporting over here. But in order to keep my design simple here, I wanted that slime to immediately fall onto these campfires, but I didn't want the enderman to teleport into this area, which is a challenge because they definitely can fit inside of here. Now the way I prevented enderman from teleporting over here was actually pretty difficult. This is because the way enderman can teleport is that the enderman will attempt to choose a location within a 64 by 64 cube centered around the enderman, and they'll choose a random location and then see if they can actually teleport to it. So notice if I damage this enderman, it can actually teleport right onto the campfires. And enderman can typically teleport to pretty much any type of block, but there is a couple blocks that work differently, including carpet. because rather than trying to place the enderman on top of the block, when it comes to carpet, the endermen ignore the carpet and try to get placed in the block underneath of it. And then only once they're standing inside the carpet does the game then check to see if they're colliding with any blocks. Well, they happen to be colliding with the carpet, and therefore it fails. But this only works because the enderman starts on a flat block. Because whatever height it's starting at, that's the same height it tries to teleport the enderman to. And that's why it ends up colliding with the carpet, because it tries to put it at the same Y level as this block over here, but just in a different area. But if the enderman was sitting on any other type of block, it can leave it and then end up on top of a carpet. That's because now the enderman is slightly higher, but when the game tries to place it over on top of the carpet, it still ignores the carpet and tries to place enderman on the block above, but it starts the enderman at the same height as the bed, so the enderman starts up here, then the game moves the enderman down until it touches the block and then sees if it's colliding with it. So now it's not colliding, and that's how it's able to succeed to teleport on top of a carpet. But when it comes to double carpet, it doesn't matter where the enderman starts, the game's going to try to place this enderman on top of the stone block underneath, but it's going to place it slightly higher because it's on top of a bed. So the enderman would teleport in something like this, then the game would move the enderman down and then see if it's colliding with anything, but it's still colliding with this top carpet, and that's why double carpet makes the enderman fail. So if the endermen were sitting on a small trapdoor, they would then get teleported over here at the same height as the trapdoor. So they'd be pretty much on top of this. Now, even though their head is colliding with this block above, the game at this moment doesn't check to see if they're colliding. It first wants to move them down. So then it moves them down onto the campfire, and then it checks if they're colliding. They're no longer colliding, so this would actually succeed. And this is why endermen would actually teleport into our killing area here. And because we're working with such a restricted area, most solutions wouldn't work because they would interfere with the slime's movement in order to jump out. As we're trying to kill them as fast as possible, in order to get more endermen to spawn in, as the longer the slimes sit around here, they're holding up the mob cap, stopping any more hostile mobs from spawning in. And after testing every height of block in the game, I wasn't able to stop them from teleporting to campfires. And we even tried putting water in because water is another thing endermen won't teleport to. And I almost thought I wouldn't succeed at solving this problem, but then I had the crazy idea, what if I could just make the enderman teleport to a block a little bit higher up so they think they're colliding with the ceiling above. Now in most cases this wouldn't work because any block that we would make them teleport to would also prevent the slimes from falling downwards onto the campfire. But one of the weird things endermen can do is actually teleport to open fence gates. Because they can't tell if this gate is actually open or closed, they just teleport to it. So with their enderman sitting here, it would then try to teleport to the top of this, and if it would teleport to the top of it, it's going to be way up here. And then the game would try moving it down until it touches the block, which it thinks it's touching even though it's open. And then the game would check to see if it's colliding with any blocks, and it definitely would be colliding with these blocks above, and this would cause the enderman to fail. So if enderman's sitting on a flat block, it can teleport over into this area. But just by adjusting this, by making it go a little bit higher, now the enderman's going to be checking a little bit higher and its head's going to be hitting into blocks, and now it can't teleport. So by taking the extra time to figure out this weird mechanic, I was able to actually get this to work without having to need any complex redstone or sorters. That way we could directly put in all of our slime and get tons of slime blocks. Now there still might be a rare chance that an ender pearl happens to fall outside of this area, in which case I went ahead and put in some hoppers underneath here. These hoppers are capable of pulling out any pearls that come into here. As I have one pearl in each slot, I can't pick up any of the slime, but if a pearl would come in, it would immediately start stacking to these over here. And since the chance of getting a pearl to come through is so extremely rare, we don't need to actually have an entire auto sorter. You can run it for hundreds of hours and you'll only find a few pearls in the first slot here. By that time you'll have so much slime you won't know what to do with all of it. Now the only redstone that is in this machine is the redstone that goes over here to these crafters. So we have some observer clocks powering this set of crafters, as well as the exact same thing over here. You can always turn these off or on just by having a little setup like this. Now the other device that has redstone is this timer here, which is synced up to the spawning rates of the enderman. So rather than constantly hitting the enderman with the new oozing potion, we're waiting until there is close to the mob cap before hitting them. So the most enderman that we can get into the system would be 70, because that's the maximum hostile mobs that can spawn around a single player. Now getting exactly 70 can be a bit difficult, even though we're having the endermen split into 4 different groups, which means that each group can have up to 25 endermen before they start taking anti-cramming. If the endermen get more than 25 in one group, rather than getting evenly divided, they'll start dying from entity cramming, and then a new enderman will have to spawn in the top and try to replace them. And if you look at the scoreboard on the right hand side, that Super Nate made for me, which is this just one command block here and a scoreboard that can actually count how many endermen are sitting in a particular area. And by paying attention to the counter on the right hand side, I was able to extend the clock so that we would get typically around 55 to 70 endermen in this group here before we would come in with a splash potion and then hit them with some lava as well. So this big comparator fade clock is the timer which waits a long period of time so we get plenty of endermen. And then after the clock completely fades out of redstone, this one turns back on and goes to the far side, repowering it, starting it all over again. If a hopper clock is less expensive than comparators for you, you can always switch it out. And then from that clock, I went ahead and routed the redstone through this observer here over into this redstone line here. The first thing it's going to do is power this far dispenser over here, which is going to splash the oozing potion onto them. And then after a little bit of delay, it's going to power this dispenser with the lava. And then after a little bit more delay, it's going to pull the lava back in. So let's go ahead and watch it. Splashes them, then it burns them. Now, since we have the enderman as an infinite source of entities, we don't have to worry about brewing up infested potions. We only have to brew up the oozing ones. And they only cost 1 slime block each in order to make, which we have plenty of those, but it's still going to cost you some blaze powder in order to use the brewing stand. These are two things that need the player, so we can't make this infinitely automatic. Now, I do have automatic farms, so you can AFK for both blaze rods and nether wart using these simple contraptions, which I'll have in the description for you. You could make an auto brewer here if you wanted to. I have this really compact design here, which can do all types of potions. You can choose to integrate the auto brewing system into this design, or you can just come here and brew some up and place them into chests like I did. And I have it so that the endermen are falling so that when they get to the bottom, they have about 3 health left, and the lava will do 4 damage, meaning it will kill all of them except for the new ones that are still falling while the lava is coming in. Now, endermen that are mid-fall when they're taking damage from the lava could end up finding a spot to teleport over here. Now, since we're using the lava there, we do need to keep flammable things at least 3 meters away from it. That's why I came in with these moss carpets around the edge here, since moss cannot actually burn, but then outside of that we can always just use normal carpets. In flat areas, I went ahead and doubled the carpets up so the enderman can't teleport to it. When it comes to stuff like redstone, either the dust or the comparators or repeaters, you only need a single layer of carpets on top just because of the way the enderman will try to clip through it and end up detecting these. And anywhere where the hole is smaller than an enderman, we don't have to worry about placing down double carpets. And it is somewhat important to keep the enderman from teleporting out, otherwise they could end up dying on the edge here and their pearls could fall into these hoppers here. You could end up getting more pearls in this system here than what it can handle. In order to get this precise amount of health left on the enderman, I had to not use the dripstone, but instead go with the longer drop chute. But this also helped with the slime, because any slime that kind of get left behind in the center would sometimes hop up and down and eventually break up and die onto the dripstone, leaving their slime balls here rather than over here. Also, this prevented the enderman from teleporting back to the top like you could see in my cobweb farm. So we didn't have to worry about any endermen dying up here and dropping off additional slimes up here, which could hold up the mob cap. And unlike the cobweb farm, where we were always reaching the amount of slimes needed to replace all the cobwebs, in this farm we're trying to reach the maximum amount of hostile mobs, so I went ahead and made the platform even bigger so we could get a lot to come in a short period of time, as we don't have to wait for the player to actually mine all the cobwebs. Speaking of the player doesn't really have to do anything other than AFK somewhat nearby. This is a good location over here. You just don't want to be within 24 blocks of the platform, otherwise they can't spawn in. And that's the only downside to this design, is it does need a player to AFK nearby, where that one over there is playerless and can run 24/7 in entity processing chunks. But unlike the other ones, this does produce a set amount of items. So if we have roughly 60 endermen every time, and they produce 2 medium slimes, and then each of those medium slimes produce an average of 3 tiny slimes, and then each of those tiny slimes produce an average of 0 to 2 slime balls, we end up with 360 slime balls every 22 seconds, which means we get an average of 60,000 slime balls per hour every single hour, all with such a simple setup. I also have a looting version of the enderman version of the slime farm. The endermen fall down just like before, except the medium slimes get burnt by some lava that's in these cauldrons here, as well as some lava that comes out of this dispenser. Then they turn into little ones and they sit down here for the player to whack at them. And then just by having an auto clicker that whacks about every 1 second, you can kill all the little ones before they start taking max cramming. Now the endermen are standing on this dispenser here, which has some water inside of it. This way we can actually wash off the loot that ends up on top of this just by dispensing it for a split moment with some redstone that's coming from the side here. You can see how the items get washed to the side and eventually will fall off into the water stream below. The loot's all collected in this water stream and then it's sent down this way, where I first sort away the pearls with these sorters here. They're a really simple item sorter, but it works fine just because the item sorters aren't being tiled side by side. And then after we pull out all the pearls, the items come down and get picked up by these hoppers down here, which are hooked up to crafters and craft them all down into slime blocks. Let me know which design you're most likely to build up, and I'll probably do a tutorial on it when we get closer to the final release of 1.21. Make sure to check the description for the latest version of this farm if anything changes or if I add any tips. You can always find the world download and the schematics in the description as well. From beacons to mob heads and everything in between, see how I designed an automatic farm for every item in the game with this playlist here. Making farms simple yet efficient takes a lot of time, so thanks to everybody who joined my YouTube membership program. Otherwise, you can always support me just by sharing what I do with your favorite Minecrafter. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye bye!